What if I told you that a meeting in Washington added $110 to your mortgage payment every single month for the next 30 years? Not a rate hike, not a market crash, a tariff. A line item in a trade policy document that most Americans never read, and the result is now sitting quietly inside the price of every new home built in this country. And here is the part that should bother you. It already happened. This is not a warning about something coming. This is a breakdown of something that is already baked in. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you will know exactly what is taxed, what it costs you personally, and what the next 5 years look like if nothing changes.
Let us set the table here, because context matters as much as the numbers. Before we even get to 2025 tariffs, building materials in America had already risen 40% since December 2020. According to the National Association of Home Builders, that increase happened before the latest round of tariff escalations even touched the supply chain. So the baseline was already brutal. Builders were already squeezed. Buyers were already priced to the edge. And then Washington decided that was a good time to add another layer. Starting in mid-2025, the federal government imposed aggressive new tariffs on the core materials that go into building a home: steel, aluminum, lumber, copper, drywall, cabinets. The stuff your house is literally made of. And here is the part that should make you laugh if it did not cost you so much money. America is in the middle of a well-documented housing shortage. We do not have enough homes. The logical response to a shortage is to build more. So naturally, we made building more expensive than it has ever been in modern history. We are not fixing the shortage, we are taxing the solution.
Let us go material by material, because this is where most coverage glosses over the details, and the details are what make this real. Steel and aluminum, which go into framing, beams, roofing, and rebar, now carry a 50% tariff. Copper, which runs through every pipe and wire in your home, also sits at 50%. Canadian softwood lumber, which supplies roughly 85% of all U.S. softwood lumber imports and nearly 1/4 of total U.S. supply, is now carrying a combined tariff rate of 45% after the Commerce Department stacked anti-dumping duties on top of a Section 232 tariff. Drywall, sourced from Mexico, which accounts for 71% of U.S. gypsum supply, carries a 25% tariff. Kitchen cabinets and bathroom vanities imported from China sit somewhere between 25 and 50%, depending on classification.
According to the Associated General Contractors of America, these rates were last updated April 8th, 2026. This is not a projection. This is the current table. Now here is the compounding problem. As of early 2026, framing lumber is sitting around $872 per thousand board feet, up nearly 13% year over year. The producer price index for aluminum mill shapes jumped 33% year over year through January 2026. Steel mill products rose 20.7% over the same period. You are not dealing with one price shock. You are dealing with a 40% baseline increase from 2020, a new tariff layer from 2025, and live commodity price inflation all running at the same time. These are not separate problems. They are the same problem, stacking on itself.
Here is how a government document becomes a line item in your monthly budget. The Center for American Progress took the estimated $27 billion in additional tariff costs hitting the construction sector and divided it across the 1.55 million new homes built annually in the United States. The result is $17,500 added to the cost of constructing a single home. Now put that on a 30-year mortgage at 6.5%. That is approximately $110 added to your monthly payment every month for 30 years. That is $39,600 over the life of the loan for materials tariffs that were never negotiated, never disclosed at closing, and never show up as a separate line on your contract. They are just quietly folded into the asking price, and by the time you see the number, the decision has already been made for you. And it's not just outside analysts saying this. According to the NAHB and Wells Fargo Housing Market Index survey from April 2025, builders themselves estimate the cost impact of recent tariff actions at $10,900 per home on average, with more than 60% of builders already reporting they are seeing higher costs directly tied to tariffs. Builder confidence sat below the break-even point of 50 every single month of 2025. ranging in the high 30s by the final quarter. 2/3 of builders are now offering incentives just to move buyers, while simultaneously absorbing higher material and labor costs. That is not a healthy industry. That is an industry running on fumes and discounts.
Now, here is the number that should stop you cold. It is not the cost per home. It is the count of people that cost removes from the market entirely. NAHB Chairman Buddy Hughes testified before the U.S. House Oversight Committee in January 2026 with this statement: for every $1,000 increase to the cost of a single-family home, an additional 116,000 households are priced out of the market. $1,000. 116,000 families. Now multiply that by 17.5, because that is how many thousands of dollars we are talking about. The math on that is uncomfortable, and this is happening on top of an affordability floor that was already collapsed. According to NAHB testimony before Congress, 77% of U.S. households cannot afford the median price of a new single-family home right now, before the full tariff impact hits sticker prices. The median price new home sits at $413,595. To qualify for that at a 6.25% mortgage rate, according to NAHB Eye on Housing data from February 2026, you need a household income of at least $124,336. The median household income in America is $84,763. That gap is not a crack, that is a canyon. And if you want one number that captures what this has done to an entire generation, here it is. According to NAHB data from February 2026, the median age of a first-time homebuyer in America hit a record 40 years old in 2025. In 1981, that number was 29. More than half of adults between 18 and 24 now live with their parents. This is not a lifestyle choice. This is a generation that ran the numbers, and the numbers said no.
Here is where the story gets darker and quieter, because this part rarely makes headlines. The Center for American Progress estimates that tariff-driven construction cost increases will result in 450,000 fewer homes being built over the next 5 years. Not delayed, not postponed, not built. That is roughly 69,000 units per year that simply will not exist. And in a country that was already running a housing deficit before any of this started, removing 69,000 units from the annual pipeline is not a slowdown. It is a compounding wound that gets worse every year you leave it untreated. Here is why that number matters beyond the headline. The U.S. was already short by an estimated 3.8 million homes before 2025 tariffs hit. According to Freddie Mac, every year of undersupply adds to that gap. Every year that gap grows, sellers have more pricing power, renters have fewer options, and the idea of waiting for the market to cool becomes less a strategy and more a fantasy. And renters are not bystanders in this story. They are the next wave of casualties. Rental prices move with supply. When new construction slows, landlords do not compete as hard. When landlords stop competing, rents drift upward and keep drifting. So the family that cannot buy a home because of tariff-inflated prices also cannot catch a break on rent, because tariff-suppressed supply is quietly making their landlord's case for them. The squeeze does not pick a lane. It hits both sides of the same family budget. Now here is what is actually being done about it, and you should know this part too. In January 2026, NAHB Chairman Buddy Hughes testified directly before Congress, requesting targeted tariff exemptions on construction materials, specifically lumber, steel, and copper. The NAHB has formally called the administration to create a builder-specific exemption process, similar to what existed in earlier trade dispute frameworks. As of April 2026, no formal exemption program for residential construction materials has been enacted. Some members of Congress have introduced discussion around reviewing lumber tariffs specifically, given Canada's outside supply rule, but no legislation has cleared committee. The builders are asking, Washington is still thinking about it. That gap between asking and acting is where 69,000 homes a year are disappearing.
Here is the full picture in one place. Building material costs are already 40% higher than they were in 2020. New tariffs added another layer in 2025. Domestic production cannot replace foreign supply fast enough to close the gap. The result is a median new home that requires a $124,000 income in a country where the median income is $84,000. According to Realtor.com analysis cited by CNBC in February 2026, getting back to 2019 affordability levels would require median household incomes to rise 56%. That is not a correction. That is not a cycle. That is the finish line moving while most Americans are still trying to find their shoes.
3 things worth carrying out of this video. First, the $17,500 added to new home construction is not a builder
builder profit grab. It is a direct pass-through of tariff costs on steel, lumber, copper, and drywall, confirmed by both independent analysts and the builders testifying before Congress. Second, affordability was already at a historic low before any of this started. Tariffs are not the origin of the problem. They are an accelerant on a fire that was already burning. Third, 450,000 homes not being built over the next 5 years is a supply story that will hit renters just as hard as buyers, possibly harder, and it is happening with almost no public attention on it. Here is the question I want to leave you with, and I genuinely want to know what you think in the comments. If the median first-time buyer is now 40 years old, and the income required to buy the median home is $124,000, at what point does homeownership stop being a goal and start being a story we tell about how things used to work? Subscribe if this gave you something to think about. It is free, which is more than we can say for literally anything else in this video. The materials inside your walls have a price. Right now, that price is higher than it has ever been, and most people signing their closing documents have no idea why.